Hey, Kathy.
Hey, Josh, have you recovered?
I'm trying. Have you?
It takes longer every year, buddy. It just takes longer every year.
Yeah, I think that desert weather really took a toll on us this year more so than others. I don't want to speak for you, but my nose and hands and face and everything are still recovering.
And then it snowed. For those that could not join us this year in Summit, boy, what we're going to talk about what you missed. We're going to give you a little FOMO. But for those of you who were there, it snowed.
hmm
It was just delightful weather in the desert. And I thought, well, my goodness, I guess hell is freezing over, but maybe not. I don't know. It was
Yes,
interesting.
it was. The weather was interesting, but I think the event as a whole was pretty spectacular. For lack of
I
other
mean,
words, that was something we've never seen or done before.
it was spectacular. Biggest group we've ever had.
Yeah.
I'm going to share later some things I found out because I want our guests to hear the long term effect that this amazing event has on our membership and what it means because I hope it's going to be Josh and Ryan stories that you don't normally hear. So let's get to our guest.
Okay, so let's, with no further introduction, these are two people. We mentioned it in our previous episode. They are on the marketing team with me. They are a husband and wife. They are a dynamic duo. We realistically could not produce the things that we produce without these two. It's Dustin and Kimmi Robertson. Kimmi is our creative director, and Dustin is our brand manager. Both of you, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I know this is not the easiest thing. You guys like being behind the scenes, but can you give us a quick introduction? Tell the Realty ONE Group world who you are. What's your story?
Well, you kind of already did that. I'm Kimmi Robertson. I'm the creative director. I've been here for about 4 years now, and I pretty much am just in charge of the overall visuals and design for the events and a lot of the other marketing materials we do.
Which is a huge part of this brand, as we know, Kathy, is our image, our brand, and Kimmi is the one behind that, which is pretty cool. And then we have her partner, Dustin, who is our brand manager.
Yeah, my name is Dustin. Basically, I'm the brand manager. I oversee all of basically anything you see, whether it's offices, a lot of the experiential stuff at NAR, if you guys have attended that, just basically everything brand and make sure that our quality standards and everything are kind of up to where they need to be.
So Kathy, I know we both know, and this is going to be I think this is going to be a hard piece of content to try to get in 20 or 30 minutes explaining how important these two are and not only what they do for Summit and all of our other events, but how their talents can really be utilized by some of our franchise owners, our managers. They can really learn from these two. So what do you think is the best way of kind of milking the Robertsons for all that they're worth?
Well, first thing I want to say is a huge thank you. And I want to make sure that all of our listeners understand, just how modest and how their soft spokenness, don't be misguided. The talent is enormous and unlimited. And the signature that is created in everything one is the signature of these two. And I'm personally so very, very appreciative. And not only for Summit, not only for Base Camp, but for the amazing impression we make at NAR
Yeah.
within the industry, throughout the entire industry. So that is the signature of the two of these brilliant minds. So I'm just so appreciative. And what you create, I want you to understand, is what you create is so much more than visual. What you facilitate and what you create is an experience, and an experience that influences and facilitates professionalism and communication at the very highest level.
Mm-hmm.
You make everything feel like home. We walk into, in an event, and the experience is just simply breathtaking. And I want to tell you real quickly, I was on a call earlier today, and this is the impact you guys have. And you probably seldom hear this, but I want you to understand, one of our brokers, who's a fairly new broker, shared with us that he received a referral from someone he ran into it at Summit that he would not have known otherwise, that's within our network, who referred him what is going to be equivalent to about $6 to $8 million in production, which is equivalent to about $700,000 in commission.
Wow.
So to be able to monetize the experience that we all had, and to be able to emphasize to those listening, when you go, take advantage of the experience that's being created.
Yep.
So thank you for that. Thank you on behalf of the network. It's just unbelievable. So I think what I personally would love to know is, how does it happen? I mean, how does all of that happen that you go, hey, what if we did this? Or help us kind of get to the bottom of how the creative process happens.
Well, first of all, thank you, Kathy. That means a lot for you to hear you say that. I mean, we work behind the scenes so often that it's, to be honest, for me, one of the most enjoyable parts of working on events is to be able to go to the event and then see the people interacting in the space and seeing them take pictures in front of things and share it, and just being a part of the memories and the experiences of the whole One family is really awesome for me. So, and you know, probably for Dustin too. But I think honestly, I don't know where the inspiration comes from.
Well, it starts, you know, our team gets together a year ahead of time, and we, I think, try to build out some sort of theme. We start concepting ideas. When Kuba gets involved, obviously, you know, things change a little bit. But I think what's going to be hard to explain on this episode is just how much you two do for our events and also for the whole company. And so I think maybe to like narrow down the question, maybe once we have kind of got the ball rolling on Summit or any event, what is maybe, because you two are a dynamic duo. I know Kimmi obviously is doing the majority of the design, but Dustin, you're really handling the ops side of our events. So maybe like you can give a quick, I don't know, 30-second answer of how do you maybe go about a giant portion of one of our events. So let's start with the shop, right? So Kimmi's obviously doing all of the design work for not only the clothing that we're selling, but also the actual shop itself. You're handling all of the operations sides of that. So kind of explain like your guys' process through that.
I don't know if people realize actually how closely together that we actually work, because really everything is a kind of 1-2 punch between the two of us. And it's really cool to actually be in a job where we get to work this closely together. But I mean, really what you said, like we start off with just brainstorming. We work 2 feet from each other. Our desks are butted up next to each other.
They also never fight. I just want to throw that out there. Like they're an enigma, Kathy. I don't know if you know this. They are a husband and wife who work together, live together, and don't fight.
Well, yeah.
There'll be some discussion around design occasionally. If I interject where she doesn't think it's relevant, that definitely happens.
We always say I'm the dreamer and he's the realist. So I will throw out, you know, big ideas like, what if we did this and let's do this? And then he's like, well, how do we do that? Yeah. And then he has to kind of like bring me back down. But I think it goes both ways. Like, whereas he may be safer in some areas, I'll kind of elevate that to push it a little bit more.
Totally.
And where I would be just in the clouds, like a little unrealistic, he helps ground that and make it actually a reality.
Yeah, I think going back to your question, Josh, it's a matter of we get together as a team, we kind of with a concept of what that's going to be, whether, for example, Stories of One was the theme this year. And then usually me and Kimmi, and we don't really turn off when it comes to this kind of thing. We're thinking about concepts. We're thinking about how that can be related into the design. And so we'll bat around stuff. So, for example, people would probably never know this, right? But this is the detail that we go into. For Stories of One, things were included in the design on the walls, things like torn pages from a book. Kimmi also kind of came with the idea of, you know, there was a lot of sand, grain, you know, the story of the grains of sand, and each one is individual and them all coming together, right? Like all those things are integrated into design. You might never see it, but overall, when you start combining those elements, I guess on some subliminal level, it probably comes through.
Totally.
If you look at the logo too for this year's summit, you'll notice the one coin kind of resembled a fingerprint a little bit, and sort of the broken rings that came together to form the circles was channeling that idea of just, you know, individuality and the uniqueness of everybody's fingerprint being different.
Yeah,
mind blown.
God, we planned this for a year. I was literally staring at logos for a week.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more to it. And then, of course, with like the shop, for example, we have to build that from scratch. Last year, we were fortunate we had a ready-made space. This year, we have to concept everything from, you know, how big it's going to be. We had the basketball court in it this year. It's just like a design element. There's just different things that you have to think about. And then you go from a scale, for example, you know, when you first walked into Summit, you had this massive archway that was constructed, right? That was built from scratch. That was not like a pre-built deal. We worked on that concept with one of our vendors. And then you had the massive entryway, Well, for that entryway, you're working on something of that scale, but we think about everything from that all the way down to when you get your badge and they paperclip 2 tickets to it. We want to have a gold paperclip on that.
Yeah.
That's like extra labor that you wouldn't even think about, that no one would notice, but it drives us nuts because you just go all the way from the biggest possible thing to the smallest possible thing.
And I think for people that were there in 2022 and also in 2023 may have noticed that we built a lot more of the branding this year, because the main thing that we want at these events is when you walk into it, it's just like Realty ONE Group everywhere. Right. Like you're immersed in it. And in 2022, we had the space had like really big walls and things that we were able to put wraps on to make it look that way. Mm-hmm. But the first thing that we noticed, because we always start planning with a scouting trip and we'll walk the space and kind of see what we're working with. And the first thing we noticed was, okay, we have this really big hallway, beautiful natural light, windows, but like what can we wrap? It didn't have the same opportunities. So that's when we said, okay, well, how do we make this immersive? We build our own branding, we build our own walls, and that's what we ended up doing.
Yeah. And Dustin, you created a time lapse, right, of the building of the walls and different wraps and that sort of thing.
Correct. Yeah. The main archway, when you walk, when you came to the elevators, we did a time lapse of that.
Because I would love for our listeners to be able to see, we were all there. We all got in 3 or 4 days before the actual event started, and to kind of see it being made before your eyes was pretty spectacular. I know for you guys, it's even tenfold because you also basically created what was being built. And yeah, I agree with you, Kimmy. Like, I'm obviously on the content side of things, but to see the event complete and then to see people immersed in the event, it really is one of the greatest parts about being on our team and getting to work on these big events. I do want to kind of take this because I want our listeners to be able to learn from some of the things that both of you do. And in particular, Dustin, I know when we are not in event season, you're handling a lot of the office branding.
Correct. Yeah.
So can you kind of maybe discuss not only that, but maybe if one of our offices wants to throw maybe a smaller event, or is looking to maybe create some sort of gathering, or they're maybe going to be having a grand opening soon. Like, obviously you can't tell them how to plan a party in the amount of time that we have, but maybe give, a couple pieces of advice, helpful tips, that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think overall, when it comes to just creating any Realty ONE Group experience, I mean, one of the key things that I get asked about a lot is weirdly enough, just our gold. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to match. It's something that when you're opening a new office, or whenever you're having a gathering, or you're just trying to get everything organized, the people are always like, well, what gold do I use? And we provide some of that. I usually tell people, when it comes to figuring out, a space and what you want to do, you kind of start with the stuff you can't change, like the hardware in your office, right? Like if you have handles on cabinets or things like that, work off of that gold, kind of reverse engineer into the colors that you want to be, because our brand is so versatile in that way. And I tell people this all the time. I've had quite a few conversations at Summit with people about, they'll say, oh, well, my office is more kind of fun and funky. And somebody will say, well, mine's more luxe, and mine's more sort of just like a nice, clean brand. So it really just depends on where you want to go with that. I've seen people who have, tried to throw gatherings, but like you said, they don't really know where to get things from. I mean, obviously, or I'm going to, say like our One Shop has a lot of great items that you can buy. Yeah. And obviously, like as giveaways and things like that, those are all great places to be. But whenever you're looking to buy new product, or if you're looking to maybe do T-shirts or something of that nature, I usually always tell people to make sure that they're getting samples of whatever you're going to give away, or if it's something that you've never done before, like a backdrop or whatever. Usually a vendor, if they're any kind of, a solid, partner in what you're trying to do, will get you samples on any of that stuff. They'll get you samples on the gold. They'll give you samples of the product that you're asking to see without any charge, because they know that, hey, this is going to be a relationship, and that's what you're doing. You're building them. So I think by establishing relationships and always having a guy for everything, that sort of is where I think my thing comes in, is I've got a guy for everything. So once you start having a guy for my promo, I've got a guy for my backdrops, I've got a guy for my prints, I've got a guy for my office wraps and things like that. You start to weed out the people who don't work for you, and then you go with the people who do. And once you have a well-established group of people, same thing with an office or even with one of our events like that, we do a lot, but without the vendors that we have that make things happen, it would be bland or not right or whatever it's going to be. So that to me is a big thing, is just making sure you have consistency and you have people in line that you trust to, if you're doing an event or whatever it is, that you have all that in place.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think some of those vendors are actually on the One Marketplace.
Oh,
So when you're looking for partners and you're on the One Marketplace, know that some of those people have been
Nice plug,
pre-vetted.
Kimmy.
That's one of Dustin's guys.
Well
Taylor will be
Or
very happy
girls,
with you.
or
Well
girls.
done.
Yeah, that was
Nice
nice.
time.
Also, well, go ahead, Kathy.
One thing that I just want to point out, because I've done a lot of real estate events, and the thing that is, and this is kudos to all of you, it never feels like real estate.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, and what I would love to look at, and Kimmy, whether it's your art design in the clothing, or whether it's any of that, it just doesn't feel like real estate. And that's what really continues to set us apart. So who are you looking at? I mean, what is behind that gives us that consistent cutting edge?
I mean, to be honest, a lot of the brand and where it has evolved into came from Kuba's vision from the start. I mean, I have done a lot with this brand in the last 4 years, but I did not create the original brand. And in a lot of ways, this is Kuba's baby.
Yeah.
And one of his directives was, I want it to be fun, but I want it to be elegant,
But you can even see, Kathy, I mean, you've been in this room, by the room that we're sitting in right now. I mean, a lot of like the carpet, the artwork behind you guys. I mean, I can see, I've worked with Kimmy now for almost 5 years. Like I can see when it's Kimmy's design versus something else. I mean, it's so night and day difference. It really is.
It is. And I love that it is elegant and just stunning, which again continues to set us apart over and over.
I agree. I do want to make sure, we are so fortunate for the two of you, and you guys really created, honestly, the foundation of Summit. But Kathy, we cannot forget Ryan, who created all of the digital art that was at Summit. And that is our producer on this podcast, who he's the voice of God. He's the one that you may never see on camera, but you hear him every now and then.
But you should.
Oh,
So
I'm here.
Ryan, we are very, very appreciative of you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Jerry's this year
Yeah,
was
thanks, Ryan.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
For everybody that was there, that was definitely all Ryan. We had absolutely nothing to do with that beyond maybe concept, but Ryan did all that. So definitely props to him.
I mean, I think to go back to that, it's very much like what we all say, like it's a very much a team collaborative effort from the start. Like I don't do any of my, like pretty much what I take is Kimmy's designs that she comes up with. And then it's my responsibility to kind of bring those to life 3-dimensionally, like visually. So without their designs and the input from the team of like building a theme every single year, like Summit isn't what it is. And I've been around since like the first summits where we used to put them on ourselves, and it was literally like we just used PowerPoint slides. That was going to be the designs and all that stuff. So to see where we've come from, like a large part of that I think is because of Dustin and Kimmy here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
It's true. And I do also think going back to what you said, Ryan, like our team has trust in one another, where we've all worked together for quite a while. And so now Ryan knows when he has to go put something together for Dre's nightclub, he doesn't even really have to look twice at Kimmy's designs. He knows, all right, this is great. I can just put this into my format and get this up at the nightclub. And that
goes both ways. I mean,
totally.
When I give those designs to Ryan, I'm like, I know he's got this and it's going to look great.
Totally.
And it allows me to focus on some of the other big picture stuff that I have to do. So.
Kimmy does give me files that are like 1,000 gigs. Like they're massive. I don't think you guys realize how crazy her designs are, but they're just that good and that detailed.
Her computer was built by the military.
It's Fort Knox.
Also, just the scale of the files. Like, so for people who have never had to do this kind of thing, it may be a little interesting to know that whenever we build these things, they're built to size. Mm-hmm. So when Kimmy has a file open on her computer, it is the size of a house. That's no exaggeration. Like literally the height and the width of a house. Some of these files are absolutely massive. And won't get to the technicalities of it, but there is a serious art to creating files that big and the production behind them. There's like it's two totally separate worlds. And so with that, and we were discussing this earlier, Kimmy and I actually in our house, whenever sometime is happening, our third floor, which is our office, sort of turns into the Summit Central. We've got samples laying all over the furniture. We have things everywhere, and we actually will build, because we can't tell, right? When you're building something that huge, you can't tell how it's going to look when it's all together, right? So if Kimmy's building kiosks and building walls and building a whole build out around a registration area, how could you possibly know if it all fits together and works? So we actually will print to scale, like tiny 6-8 inches, and we'll build a tiny little model of what that whole operation will look like on our third floor. And we'll just kind of, put little figures into it or whatever and sort of see how it's going to look. And you'd be amazed at how much we catch when we do that, where things don't line up, or it just as a whole, it doesn't look right. It drives us crazy because we have to go back and Kimmy's editing another,
when I'm working on
hours.
a 30 gig file,
Right.
and like I line the two pieces up, and I notice like one little thing isn't perfectly aligned, like that doesn't sit well with me.
No, I
So it might take me 15 minutes just to like nudge the thing down and then save the file. But I'll absolutely go through that, because there's always that moment of truth when you get to the event and you see everything going up. And I've been looking at it at like a, 15-inch monitor for the past 3 months. And then all of a sudden, okay, it's life size, it's huge. And there's always that like sigh of relief when you see it goes up and like the textures look good and the print quality is good, which is a lot to do with Dustin's people. But
And Kathy, I think, you're behind the scenes a lot with us at these events. And I think you see, we obviously see things that the attendees do not. I think our events are usually pretty successful, even though, some of the things that we see that we have to fix. But it's like what Kimmi just said, the attention to detail that Dustin and Kimmi have and that we have on our team is, in my opinion, a huge factor to why we create these successful events. I mean, that's, I think that there are so many people that would have been in your situation where you had that file open and it was slightly tweaked and they'd be like, all right, let's roll with it. But you don't. And I think that that's a huge quality to have.
yeah, I mean, I think our whole team takes a lot of pride in our work, and that's why we could rely on each other so much. So
It's high trust. I mean, the essence of a good team is high trust, and you guys live that every day. And the thing that amazes me that I want our listeners to understand is, and Corey always says she has such a small, nimble group. I mean, you can't imagine those. For listeners, I want you to understand there are basically 8 people putting this on.
Yeah, I would say 8.
It's very seldom that you find this massive talent combined with such a tremendous work ethic. And that's what I am constantly just in awe of, is your commitment to us and to the network. And that's what I'm so appreciative of, because it is that attention to detail. It is, I'm just amazed that you build a model, but that makes sense, because I know, Dustin, when you go to like NAR, you have to build that booth within a certain parameters, right? You can't just have a wild ass guess of what size it's going to be.
Correct. Yeah. So for NAR is a little bit of a different animal, because in that one, you definitely have a very specific footprint. In fact, our booth is normally so popular, we have people running out into the alleys, and we've gotten in trouble for it more than a few times because we're overflowing with people coming through there. And in those scenarios, you have to be very diligent about not only the size of the print, but also everything that you're putting in there. And then, of course, Kuba will usually have a last minute change, which whenever you're moving around, it's like reorganizing the architecture of a house in that situation, because we have to work with vendors who are literally building walls and having to reconstruct. So that's a totally different animal. Summit's a little bit more forgiving in that, because we are so close to those vendors and we can kind of work on the fly. But NAR is very rigid when it comes to that kind of thing, for sure.
Yeah.
So I just think I had underestimated the amount of engineering, not only design and artwork and graphics and creative, but the actual engineering and all of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a ton of engineering. In fact, me and Josh went back and forth on the shop. I mean, little things where, for example, we have some gold racks in the front, but we wanted some walls, because obviously you want to have a little bit of separation between the alleyways and things. So we kind of decided on putting a couple of plexiglass panels so that you could actually see those racks through there. And that's a whole other engineering thing that you have to work through with with our vendor, and that's all from scratch. So that's something that literally was did not exist, period.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about Summit too, right? Like literally when you walk in that space, if you were to go and see it now, and honestly within about 4 hours of shutting down shop, it is back to flat, nothing, just hallways and stuff again, because the vendors have to come in and out.
Yeah.
So you build from literally an idea and a concept with our team all the way to what you see come to fruition in a million different ways. It's kind of crazy actually how much of it comes together.
And we can now finally say it, Kathy, because the event has already happened. For those who didn't attend, you obviously missed Shaquille O'Neal, as well as many other great speakers. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because in the shop, Dustin and Kimmi and I met a couple months ago, and we decided when we knew that Shaq was going to be one of our speakers, but could not say anything, which was really, really difficult for all of us. We decided we wanted to have a half court basketball court inside the shop, which was really cool. But, you know, that it gave Kimmi the opportunity to create a, you know, wood paneled half court basketball court. How many other real estate companies do you know would let their designers be able to do that? You know, like that's pretty cool. And for us to just kind of concept it one day while we're sitting on Slack and then it actually gets made. I mean, that's like that. Those are the things that I really, really do love about this brand.
One thing that we highlight, Mark and I always highlight in our VIPs, is an in-house creative studio.
Yeah.
And what you guys have done and what you continue to do daily is to help Kuba's vision not be diluted, but to maximize his vision and to literally bring it to life. And if you know Kuba, you know how scary that can be.
Yeah.
But actually bring that to life, where if we were having to outsource it, can you imagine how watered down a lot of that would be? So thank you.
Yeah, I can actually tell you a quick behind the scenes story that I don't think anybody knows about except for maybe me and Kimmi from Summit this year. So there was one piece that was in the main ballroom. I don't know if this will make it to the final edit, but
I know. I already know what you're going to say. This is definitely going to make it to the final edit.
So basically, we were working we had a new company that we're working with, and there was this, Kathy, I'm sure you remember seeing it up above. It's a giant gold ring that was a print.
Yeah.
So what happened with that was we did not have any. That was not one of my guys. That was someone different. And I wasn't really comfortable with it, but we ended up going forward because it was, you know, they were recommended to us, whatever it was. And so we went ahead. Kimmi gave them the art file, everything else. They actually sent it back, and it was horribly. It was just the quality was not great on the proof they sent over. We never approved it. Fast forward to the event, we get in there, and Kimmi comes, and she'd been keeping an eye out for it because she knew we both were waiting for it to go up. Well, it goes up, and it was really, really bad. It was to a point where. And keep in mind, the general session starts at 7 a.m. on Monday. This is about 4 p.m. on Sunday, right? Mm-hmm. So we're talking about less than,
12 hours.
Less than 12 hours.
No, a little more. Sorry.
Yeah. So, but the fact of the matter is, this is when we're finding out on the heels of that. Kuba was also doing a walkthrough. He couldn't get into that room because we have to have key cards. So essentially, we went in there, and I called one of my guys. Actually, it's a woman, Lindsay, in Vegas, and I said. And I was talking to her about it. She's the one that did a bunch of stuff. And she said, oh my God, she said, I can't. And I was like, is there anything you can do? So literally between 5 p.m., Kimmi didn't even have to edit the file. It was not her fault. It was literally on the vendor.
Thank you.
Wait, can I, really quick, I just want to say, just because they didn't get to see the visual that we saw, it was to the point, Kathy, where you couldn't read Realty ONE Group. It was so pixelated.
It was really, really bad. Yeah. And there was no way it could happen. So basically the options that were given to me were either we can leave it or we can have a blank ring. And I said, I'm not doing either one of those things. There's absolutely no way. So I called my vendor, and literally because of our relationship there, she said, for you guys, she's like, I'd move heaven and earth. So literally she had a team of people who came out 6:00 that night. They measured the ring. They got everything done. They actually had people stay at their office overnight. And something that big too, something to realize that it's not one piece of material, it has to be sewn together. So essentially you have to print in separate pieces, sew it together. It's a massive undertaking. That would be like a 3-week process.
It's a 30-foot ring.
It's a 35-foot ring. So it's a massive process. It would take most vendors 3 weeks. She had about less than 10 hours because it had to be back to by 3 a.m. So she had a team there overnight, printed it, put it together and everything else. And literally by the time 7:00 got there, it was a perfect ring, and it was done. And that was all done only, by the grace of like my vendors and the fact that we do have those good relationship with them. Yeah. And also Kimmi's artwork is, is pretty much flawless when it comes to that kind of thing. And they know that it's not on our side if there's an issue with it most of the time with that kind of thing. So
yeah, Kathy, that's case in point. What I mean by the stuff that we see that kind of not necessarily goes wrong behind the scenes, but isn't up to our expectations. It because of people like Dustin and Kimmi, we get those things taken care of, and our events are better because of it, which is pretty damn cool.
It's like just simply spectacular.
Yeah.
So thank you. Wow.
We don't want to keep both of you. We know that you both hate being on camera and hearing your voices, and
no, they love it. More episodes.
No.
More episodes.
I was just going to say, I'd love to have you back
We
on.
should have a series with them.
Yeah. I'd love to have both of you back on separately together, whatever you guys would like. So thank you both. Thank you both for joining us today, for everything that you bring to our team and to the entire company. Like, we could not do this without you guys. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you. We appreciate you so much. You make a huge difference.
Thank you, Kathy.
And thanks, Kathy. Yeah.
We love you.
Yeah, seriously.
And thank you, Kathy. I'll see you next week.
Okay.
All right. Bye,
Thanks so much.
Kathy. We thank you for joining us today on another episode of One on One, a Realty ONE Group podcast. We are powered by One.U and ask if you have suggestions, recommendations, or questions, please email learning@realtyonegroup.com. And remember, pay close attention to the details, listen to understand, not respond, and always be a resource, not a sales pitch.